Hello everyone. Welcome to another Inkarnate live stream. Today we are going to be doing ruins, caves, temples, and towers, all within the fantasy world style. And basically that's going to be where do you put them, what kind of stamps do you use to put them together, and how do you connect them with roads, and a lot more. Now, if you want to follow along in today's stream, you can totally clone and edit this map that you see in the chat. Now, if you're following along on YouTube, you'll find that in the video description. So let's just jump right in, all right? So first we'll remove this title, and we're going to zoom in a little bit. And first, when you are putting down any point of interest, that's a POI. So if I say POI, that's point of interest for shorthand. Anytime you're putting down a point of interest, you need to factor in what the other points of interest are in proximity to that location. So for instance, if your players just got done exploring a major city and they're thirsty for some combat, then it doesn't hurt to put a ruin, a cave, a temple, or a tower in the vicinity of that same city or anywhere near that area so that they can go to there and get some combat. Now, let's say that an event takes place at any one of these locations and they move the story along, make sure that you have multiple towers or ruins that are around the city or whatever it might be, so that no matter where your players go, if they go north, south, or whatever to the tower or ruin or whatever it might be, they'll always be able to trigger that event and then be able to move on in the story. The mark of a great DM or GM is having the ability to adapt to the circumstances in which your players create. Because believe me, your players are never going to do exactly as you would expect them or intend them or want them to do. It's about it's about adapting and changing to the circumstances in which your players create. So that's really a good mark of a DM there. Well, let's start with the first one, which is ruins. And when it comes to ruins, there's a lot of great locations to put ruins. First, we should probably pick a ruin stamp. You can just click right into the catalog, a ruin, and you'll see that there are a couple options. You've got these ruins right here. You've got this brown one, and then you have these other human ruins. I'll open them up, and you can see they're basically like little village pieces. You've got a windmill right here. All of these work just fine. I'm going to go with this type of ruin, this brown one. I kind of like that. And you really, what decides where I've put a ruin, a tower, or a temple really is, besides the proximity to other POIs and where they are in the campaign, your players are in the campaign, it's also about picking an interesting landscape in which to put the ruin, the cave, the tower, or whatever. So you could put a ruin in the middle of a lake, like right here, and that would look interesting. You could say that it's like a ruin that's under the water, so you could change the blend mode, change it to luminosity, and then just bring the contrast down to remove some of that line work. And then you can see that there's a ruin in the water. And if you don't like that, then you can put it in between a circle of trees is a good place, so it's kind of framed by the trees. Another great place to put any kind of POI is on top of a hill. And historically, whenever you put POIs on top of a hill or a mountain, those act as a great or a defensible position. So it's always good to put them on top of a hill, put them on a mountain. You could even put them within, inside of a crater. If you want to put them inside of a crater, you could put them along the road somewhere leading. These are all good locations to put a ruin. It's up to you on how you want to do it. I'm even going to maybe edit a little bit of the ruin. I'm going to just use this to kind of transform it a little bit. I want it to be a little bit taller. And then I can place it anywhere. On top of this hill right here is perfect. There's another nice hill right here. Scale it up, put it right on top of the hill. Great location. Like if your players just got back from exploring this village and talking with NPCs, they can travel up this road and then go to this ruin right here. Now, one thing you could do that's really fun is that you could create a path that leads to it, but instead of using this flat straight line, this line right here, solid line, I could use dashed lines to represent like a path. So something smaller than a regular road. Let's go ahead and do the blur, and then that way you have these dots here. And so that's one way to kind of show that this is not a difference between the main carriageway or main road. Instead, it's like a path that leads up to it. So generally, I like to just change this up so you have that nice dashed line there. And there's a lot of different places to put a ruin. Let's put down a couple more. There's another ruin right here. We could place that. We had one over here on top of this hill. Let's put one maybe next to over here. Let's see here. Let's keep looking around. Let's look for a good location. Maybe in the middle of the grass here. This is a good one right here. You can put that there and then just take the path tool and just have a little road that leads up to it, or have another road that leads from the village to that ruin. So placing ruins, super easy, not complex. Just place them next to settlements. Maybe it represents an old settlement that was ruined or attacked. It could represent a ruin where your players are going to go to combat or uncover secrets, whatever it might be. Lots of good options there that you can kind of choose from. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Some great places that you can put are some caves. And I've already put down some caves already on the map, but we'll put some more down. Like you've got these kind of nostril looking caves right here, and then you have a cave that's up against the mountain. And in fact, we'll go ahead and put a cave up against somewhere. Let's try maybe over here. You could put a cave in here. A great place to put caves that I really like is to place them inside of a crater. So it kind of looks like maybe inhabitants were able to create a cave system from one of the craters, or maybe there's a vein underneath the crater. But what you do is, because this is red like this and not brown, you just need to change that blend mode to luminosity and it will blend right in. It does look a little bright. Whenever you change the blend mode to luminosity, you do have to change the brightness and sometimes the contrast so that it matches in. At 100%, it's a little bright. So just bring the brightness down and you have this nice cave that leads from that pit there, and it will have a little path that kind of leads up into it. So you go to it, or you could put it over here if you wanted to. And whenever you're doing your roads, just be sure that you don't have them be straight. Okay? Straight roads are indicative of maybe regional areas where you can kind of zoom in and you're close. Roads can be straight, but when you're at this world scale, roads are a little windy. And what that means is that they're interacting with the terrain. That's why I'm making them wavy like that. So just keep in mind that when you're making roads, don't make them straight. Do some meandering a little bit, just like a river meandering along. That way it kind of represents that you're bumping into terrain and stuff like that, okay? Let's add in a couple more caves. I think it'd be fun. We can just type in cave. And let's kind of go with this one right here. I like this one. And great places to put caves too are up against mountains, just like I have one here. You have a nice cave there. It's also good to have them anywhere up against a mountain. You know, it doesn't really matter. You could put one right up against here if you wanted to. And I always, just rule of thumb for me, I try to use the luminosity blend mode so that way it really, really kind of blends in well. We'll change the brightness a little bit too. There we go. So you have this nice little cave. I'm going to rotate it too. There we go. A cave that kind of goes into these mountains right here. So if your players maybe want to go into like a dwarven realm or some kind of subterranean area, then there's a cave there. And you don't have to always have a path or a trail that leads to the cave. Sometimes players will go off the path, they'll go off the trail, and they'll find the way to explore without using the guides, without using those trails and stuff. So that's pretty nice. Let's keep adding some more stuff to it. I think we've done enough for caves. Let's go ahead and move on to temples. And for me personally, temples, just like these other ones, temples, good locations for temples are going to be places where it has unique and interesting terrain, right? Temples are generally up high. They represent, you know, a higher existence, higher plane, ideology, theology, religion. So maybe put them on top of a mountain. Maybe if it's a water temple, put them in the water. If it's a forest temple, put it in a forest, right? So the location really determines what kind of stamp that you're going to use. I kind of like this area over here, and I think it'd be cool to put a little temple that a little temple right here that should be right here in the water. And you can scale it down. And so you have in it, I like the fountain right there. It kind of looks like it's taking water up from that lake right there. And then it trickles down from the fountain and then goes back in. So it's kind of a nice, interesting effect here. You can have a temple there, but temples can be anywhere. You can put them on a mountain. You could put them underwater like we did with the luminosity blend mode. Place them on an island. It's really up to you on how you want to go about doing it. So there's just so many places. Whenever I make these rock plateau rocks with the cliffs, It's also another great place to put a temple. And just remember what kind of temple it is. If it's a human temple, then maybe use the human temple stamp, put it right on top here. If you want to have a ramp that goes up to it, bridges work as great ramps. So you have this bridge right here, and I'm just going to scale it down and then put it up against here like this. And then it creates this nice ramp going up from the plateau rock up to the temple. Great. I really love using that myself, so feel free to do that. And we can maybe just have a road that kind of just meanders its way right over to that temple. Let's keep adding more temples. Maybe we want to have like a fire temple or something like that. That works fine too. Know that there are different types of stamp styles that you can work with. You have the isometric and you have these flat ones. It's up to you. My only suggestion is that if you are going to, it's always good to kind of stick with continuity. I know that some stamps don't have flat while other ones don't have the isometric variation. That's okay, but try to stick to either one or the other, purely isometric POIs or purely flat. Now, of course, you don't have to do that, but generally, just for the sake of continuity, it looks a little better. Let's put down kind of a fire temple. Like you could put a fire temple right next to the lava or the volcano right here. That's one place that you could put it. If you felt like it kind of clashes, you can always do the luminosity blend mode trick if you want to. That's up to you. If you don't like the luminosity blend mode, you can always change it to something else. Maybe you just don't like the colors. You can go back to normal. We can saturate it and then change the hue. You can change the hue to whatever you might want it to be. So it's up to you how you want to go about doing it. Maybe you want to use a different one. Maybe you want to use this one instead. Put it on top like this. It's up to you. Lots of different options. So whatever it might be, it's a lava temple, then put it near a volcano. Put it near wherever you might want it to be. And of course, you can always do all kinds of special fun things with your POIs. Like a temple is kind of a special place. So let's talk about maybe adding a little extra to it. So if I go into Fantasy Regional, there are these nice flame stamps right here. And if I want to show this as like a special kind of temple, then I can just put some flames coming out of the top of that spout right there as suggested. And so now you have a little extra. Now it's a little something special. You've got this flame right here, and you can add in maybe, let's say, a light source. Just type in light, and we'll go to Fantasy Battle Maps. And then you have this light here, and then you can just place it on top. I'm just going to give it a moment to load. Just give it a moment here. Light sources are a great way to add a little extra something special to your map. Maybe you want to use a blue light stamp to show that there's glowing off of blue crystals, or there's a green stamp, a light stamp to show maybe some kind of fog or poisonous mist. So there's a lot of options there that you can choose from. It looks like it's trying to load here and it won't let me. So we might have to go out and then restart it here. But I need to let it go so I can save first. There we go. Let's go ahead and just save it. Whenever that happens, it starts telling you it's loading the art. You just need to give it a minute. Don't panic, okay? Because if you panic, then you might have this impulse to press the back button and not have any changes saved. It usually doesn't take more than about 30 to 60 seconds for that to go away, all right? So let's just give it a moment to save, and then we'll continue adding more. So as I was saying, lights stamps are a great way to add some extra oomph. So let's maybe show another, like an ice temple, and I'll kind of show you what I was talking about there. So we'll go ahead and go back into Fantasy World, and we'll choose another one for a temple. Let's maybe choose this one right here. It's got that blue. I kind of like that. And we can maybe put it down here, or we can put it anywhere in here. You could put it on top of a mountain. You know, it's up to you. There's also over here, we had tons of stuff over here. Maybe I want to have like a crystal temple over here if I wanted to, instead of this one, so that I can go in and just type in crystal. It's all about being able, oops, I spelled that wrong. My mistake. There we go. Oops, still don't know how to spell. All right, let's just go to Inkarnate here first, and then we'll go to crystal. There we go. And you can take any crystal you want. There's all these ones. I'm just going to use this one right here. And maybe I just want to put some crystals on top of those towers. And sometimes when you're editing a POI, like a temple or whatever it might be, zoom in so that way you can kind of get a closer view of it. Let's just use this one right here. And I'll just put the crystals on top. Let's push this down a layer. There we go. Push this down a layer. Push this one up a layer. There we go. And then I can go ahead and put some crystals on top of it. Or I can use a different one. There's all types of crystals to choose from. I do like this one. I could put some crystals on top right here. Maybe one right here. Maybe one back there. And then I can just create group. And then put this crystal tower or crystal temple over here. Same thing too, I can take a light source like this, and then I can just change the hue to blue like this, and then just put it right there. And then you have this nice kind of glow. So just think about light sources can be a great way to amp up or to make your POI pop out more, okay? So you see that the blue light works well, and then you have this yellow or reddish light here for that temple. So always think about when you're adding those kind of things, you do have a great way to make these things kind of pop out. Let's go ahead and move on to the last one, which is going to be towers. And we can go back to Fantasy World and type in tower. As always, you can factor in where to put towers depending on where the plot is or what's going on. If you just got back from some major combat, maybe somewhere in the plains, maybe a big battle took place and you just want your players to explore this old tower that's been abandoned, that's great. Towers can go anywhere, but just like ruins and other buildings, they do really well on top of hills and mountains. And again, historically, these have been strategically the best defensible positions. So on top of a mountain, on top of a hill. Another good place is to put them along a tower. Let's say that you have maybe a bridge that's going across this river right here. Then a tower is a great thing to use to guard that bridge, to overlook the river, to see when people are coming. Towers are good to put next to cities or villages. Think of them as a defense tower or a warning tower to let people know that people are coming to attack a village or a city or a capital, what might be. So towers can be anywhere and they can have any function. But you can put them even in the desert, maybe one next to an oasis, one that a tower that overlooks this oasis, guards and protects. Maybe it acts as a caravanserai where people who have just been on a caravan can stop in the middle of the desert, rest at the tower, get water, eat, stuff like that. So think about that. So lots of cool things that you can do with towers. But I'm going to put one here, and I'm not going to worry about any paths leading to it because I feel like it's a desert. And in a desert, there's not like an official kind of road because there's a lot of sand. And so the road is going to get covered up with the winds blowing the sand around. So I won't worry about a road there. Let's add a whole bunch of other towers. Let's keep going. There's so many different ones. There's a elven tower. And remember we were talking about mountains. So it might be a good idea to put like maybe an elven tower overlooking the lake, overlooking the tower and this whole elven area. Maybe I want it to be a floating tower. You could do that too. If it's a floating tower, then I would suggest that maybe you take a karst like this, and then you can put the karst underneath the tower. Let's put it beneath the tower, and that way it looks like it's floating on top. You create group. There we go. And then we can just put it, maybe it's over the water like this, or maybe it's up here. So a great way to do floating anything, floating towers, floating cities, is just take a karst or a mountain and put it underneath it. So it looks like it's an island underneath, right? So let's put it over here. I wasn't put on the mountains, but I don't have any floating towers. And in fact, I could probably put a couple floating towers along this edge here. And maybe these can be the coastal defense. And what I want to do is I don't want them all to be the exact same. So what I'll end up doing is just changing them up. Like this. Let's put a couple more on there. Okay, let's go put another one in here. And one thing you also can do is you could put a shadow there if you wanted to. You could use the top layer. You could use a stamp and a blur. There's so many different options. Let's just go with top layer. And just so that you show that it's floating, you might, if it's not enough, doesn't seem obvious to you that it's floating, that's okay. You can use that top layer, a small brush. Whenever it comes to shadowing, I generally use around 30% brush. And then if you really want the tower to seem like it's high up in the air, you would put the shadow further away from it. If you wanted to show that the tower was floating closer to the land, bring the shadow higher up or closer to it. So I want to show this one's fairly higher up, so I'll put it right there. I'll put it, this one maybe is a little bit closer to the ground, so I'll put it right there. And this one right here is fairly high up, so I'll put the shadow there. So if you want to show that there's some shadows, that way it kind of really shows that it's popped up. But there's a lot of different ways that you could go about doing that, okay? Also, fun things that you can do is you can have the series of towers maybe act as a barrier that protects a barrier, right? You could take a path and make it blue, make the shadow blue, blur it, and let's change the width and let's make it this way. And then we'll go segments, and maybe you want showing that there's like maybe some crystals on top. Let's go ahead and change the shadow to blue as well. There we go. And let's change the width. There we go. And then of course I could take a crystal and just put it on top of here, and then it will kind of look like maybe, just maybe, the crystals are shooting at each other and then kind of creating this kind of magical barrier effect. If you want, you could have them going around the whole area, creating this barrier that goes around it. It's up to you, right? So when it comes to towers, they can serve as any kind of function. You could even have a tower that fell over if you wanted to. So we could open up another one, type in tower. Let's say that I want to have a tower that fell over. For instance, I could have maybe, let's not use that one, use a different one. Let's see our options here. Maybe, let's also put some orc towers in too. I think that's kind of nice. Great places to put orc towers, by the way, are inside of pits. Great place to put them, right? Or you can put them on top of a mountain, of course, or a hill. Maybe you want to put a couple of them right here along the way, just along this road, so it's defending the road. Put one here. Great places to put them if you want a series of defensible positions along a road. Towers work great for that. So you put them along that road. Let's do one that's kind of fallen over and broken. So I'll end up using maybe this tower right here. And let's go find a good location. Maybe I want to show that a tower has like fallen over and has broken a little bit. Then I can go ahead and just place it right there. And then I want to show that maybe it fell or it broke. So what I can do is just type in rock. Now there won't be any rocks in Fantasy World, but you can switch over to Fantasy Battle Maps and let's just type in rubble. And there's some rubble right here, and I'm going to desaturate it. And what I'm going to do is go down a layer. I want it to be underneath, and then what I can do is just put some stones down like this, and let's also desaturate this one so that it's all the same color. There we go. And then I also want to make sure that there's some stones in overlapping. Remember I talked about this overlapping is super important. So let's put one there. Let's make them a little bit smaller and put some on top of the tower. So now you have this nice ruined tower area. And we can also apply some textures to make that look good. So and there's all kinds of textures we can use. Cracked ground from the dungeons and Fantasy Battle Map works great. I can go to advanced settings. I want to change the size because you can see the cracks are huge. Remember, it's a battle map texture, so you're going to have to scale it down. And then we'll go ahead and just apply a little bit of this cracked ground so that way it kind of looks like it's been ruined, and it blends in the final stamps with it. So now you have this ruined tower right there. So that works out well. So a lot of things that you can do. We can throw in some more towers as well. Like maybe we want to have one that's in the water. I'll show you a fun way to where you can make a tower look like it's half in the water and half above the water. So we'll type in tower again. And remember when I said this, you should scale up a stamp when editing it so that way it's more easier to edit. So first one is to take one tower, change the blend mode to luminosity. I'm going to change the contrast and the brightness so it kind of looks like it's underwater. And maybe I'll even blur it a little bit so it looks like it's under the water. And then I'll set another one. Let's turn that blur off, turn the contrast back on, put it up a layer. Let's push this one down. There we go. I'm going to put it on top of it like that, right? Okay, so that one's on top of that one. Let's even push it up so it doesn't show like it's too much under the water. And then we'll go ahead and take a white path, just put it down real quick and just see what it looks like. And then I can edit it as I see fit. Let's blur it. Let's blur it even more. And I'm going to create some waves that are going around it. In fact, what might work better is taking a whirlpool. Let's take this whirlpool right here and let's put that up one. Let's change the blend mode to luminosity maybe. Oopsie, luminosity. There we go. We'll put that right on top of it. And then let's change the brightness. There we go. And now you have like a whirlpool going around the tower. You can create the group and then you can move it to where you feel you want to have it. You can put it anywhere you want, over here somewhere, move it over to here, wherever you feel the tower might look good, maybe along the coastline here. And you notice that the water is quite a bit brighter there, so that tower sticks out a lot underneath. So just change the brightness a little bit. There we go. So now it's not so ridiculously bright. Okay, and I'm going to turn the blur off for that as well. I had the blur on this one. I didn't mean to do that. There we go. Now you can kind of see the whirlpool a little bit better. Let's scale it down just a little bit more. There we go. So you have this nice underwater kind of tower. Let's go ahead and save this, and then we'll add in just a couple more items. Then we're going to call it good. Overall, I kind of like that that it's kind of going with so far, and appreciate everyone who's giving their suggestions in the chat. Appreciate that. I love when people give suggestions. That's always a nice thing. So we'll quickly save, and then we'll add in just a couple more things. I think it'd be good to throw in another temple, and especially maybe like I don't have anything in the these polar regions, so it might not hurt to put like maybe something in the polar regions, like maybe an ice fortress or something like that. So I can totally do that. Maybe I want to put a fortress deep in the mountain ranges here, up against this mountain right here. And of course there's a lot of different things that I could do to make it blend better. There's always that luminosity blend mode, and just bringing the brightness up. That way it kind of looks like it's a little more covered with snow. So you have a nice mountain range, or a nice that. You can also do the same thing you did with the bridges. Maybe you want like a ramp that leads up to it. You can totally do that. We can desaturate it, bring the brightness up, and then you have a nice little ramp that kind of leads up to there. Those ramps always work. Those little bridges always work great for little ramps, especially if you have something on the top of a hill or on top of the cliffs like we did right here. It's always a method that I use, so that way there's kind of this easier access to get to these locations. Some other things that we can add that might look good are putting things that maybe float, like maybe some ruins that are on the edge of a crater. So maybe I want to take some ruins and put them like on the edge of the crater here, because it kind of makes sense. In fact, let's use a different one. Let's put a ruined village that has like maybe a windmill on the side, and then maybe there's a little thing right there, and then we'll put another one along the edge here. So you have like this ruined kind of area. So maybe this is an old ruins that your players have to visit by this crater to uncover some clues. Maybe there's some combat that takes place there. It covers a large area, so these ruins kind of cover this large area. If you feel like that's just too much, you're really focusing on scale more than aesthetics, then bring them closer together and just put a couple. Because if you're trying to stick to, as much scale as possible, then, you don't need to put down 12 buildings to show a city. or a town, you only need to show 1 or 2. Obviously, the larger the location is, like if it's a capital, you might have 5 buildings that represent a city, while with a village, you might just have 1 building. All right, where are we at for time? 30 minutes, but I think that is good. Let's throw in just 1 more temple. I kind of feel like we should make a temple in the clouds. So let's do that. Let's type in cloud. And I'm going to go to the parchment world because some of my favorite clouds are in here. Just note that this cloud has a baked-in shadow. If you kind of want to avoid that baked-in shadow, you can change the blend mode to lighten, and you'll notice that it removes the shadow. So kind of a nice little trick there. Some stamps you can remove the shadow by just changing the blend mode to lighten, but it can't. You just have to remember that it depends on the color of the stamp. Because this is grayscale, or because this is just kind of more off-whites, it works really well with it. But let's just say that I want to have some clouds, and then I want to put a temple on top of it, so I can add a cloud temple. And let's just use a flat one, because I've been using kind of the isometrics to go with the flat one. And what I can do is I can select both of these and just desaturate them. And then I'm going to bring the brightness up on this one, and then bring the contrast down so that it kind of blends in with the cloud. So now you have this nice floating temple. Create group. There you go. Maybe I want to have some birds floating around it that kind of protect. So let's go ahead and just do this. Type in birds. Maybe I want some giant birds like rocks or something that protect the temple. So I can do that too. Let's just scale it down. That way it's the right size, and you can put that wherever you want. I can put it over here. Maybe it's middle in the ocean somewhere. Maybe it's hovering over these mountains over here somewhere. Usually I would add a lot more clouds, so it's not just a single cloud. But yes, you could definitely place them anywhere that you really want it to be. Honestly, I think it looks good contrasting against the ocean here. So I think that will do just fine. So I'll probably just put it over here somewhere. And again, just place a whole bunch of other clouds there as well. Just remember that you have to desaturate them and change the blend mode to lighten. And then what I'll do is the main cloud in which the temple is on top of, I'll have that be at 100% opacity. But then I can also go in and bring the opacity down for other clouds. And that way it doesn't distract or hide from the cloud that has the POI on it, right? That cloud sticks out quite a bit because it's set to 100% opacity. That way it really shows, right? And also it wouldn't hide the stamp that's supposed to be behind it. But usually that's what I do when I'm putting down a POI on a cloud. The main cloud, 100% opacity, and then some other ones on top of it. All right. Let's take a step back here and take a look. All right, well, I think that is it. You get the general idea. Whenever you're, putting down any one of these things, the caves, the ruins, temples, towers, factor in the proximity to other buildings, other locations like cities, capitals, also where the players are in the campaign, right? If they just had some crazy combat, then maybe you want to send them to a tower to just solve puzzles or to avoid traps. If they got done doing just solving puzzles and traps and they want a little bit more high octane adventure, like some combat, then make a ruined tower or a temple somewhere that your players have to go to engage in combat, to carry out some kind of side quest, or it's a part of the main quest to move the story along. Just remember that the good mark of a DM is the ability to adapt to the circumstances which your players make. Believe me when I tell you that your players are going to do something completely different than you probably want them to do. So to stay on top of that, you don't have to put all the locations on your map at once. Things are going to change. If your players decide to go north instead of south, and south is where the ruin or the temple or the tower is, that's going to trigger an event that's going to move the story along, but they decide to go north, then put that location to the north of where they're traveling. Adapt. make changes, okay? So don't ever set things in stone on your world map. And in fact, what I do when I have a campaign with a world map is I don't populate it with every single location. I'll actually only put POIs within the region that the players are starting out as. As each player goes into different regions, I add new POIs to that region. And in that way, I'm not kind of trapped in where events and where locations and combat is going to be. Okay, now if you do want an overworld map with all the details on it, that's fine. But when it comes to my players and when I want them to see the world map and then go to the next area, I only put the POIs in the region that they are exploring. That, or you can do a fog of war, and you can use the top layer to create a fog of war. Let me show you how to do that real quick before we get out of here. I'll show you how to do that. You take that top layer, the color, and you're going to fill it, okay? Then you simply need to go to the erase button, choose circle, and then all you have to do is just erase like this, okay? Now, if that's too abrupt, you can bring the opacity down like this, and this is how you would show a certain region in your map with a fog of war. Really, 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 really helpful. I only want the players to explore this area. Now I want them to explore this area. And of course, as the players go along, more and more of the fog of war goes away, right? As they explore the area, more and more and more will be revealed, okay? So it's a little secret there on how to do the fog of war. All right, well, hey, that is it for today's stream. I hope you found these tips and tricks helpful when putting together those kind of POIs. Just know that the logic for these type of POIs is the same for all of them. It could be a village, a town, a capital. It doesn't have to be a ruin, a cave, a temple, or a tower, right? Whenever you're putting a POI, just always think about proximity, what's going on in the current campaign or quest, and then how you can proceed forward using that POI to your advantage, because you just really want to give yourself less work. Planning everything out in advance, everything, and I mean everything on the whole world is so much work. Give yourself less work by just sticking to one region, populate it with the POIs, arrange them and move them as you see fit to adapt to the characters or the player's decisions, all right? Hey, that is it. Thank you so much. Please stay safe and healthy. Merry map making to all of you. I will see you all next Wednesday for the next stream, okay? Auf Wiedersehen, my friends. Take care now, all right?